I often get asked about increasing the fat content of milk, and I hear people worrying about babies needing more fat. So I want to address this in today's quick hit episode. By the end of today, you will know more about the fat composition of human milk, and your worries will be eased about fat content. And I may have some tips if you would like to try to increase it. So let's get into it. I just want to start out by playing this little clip.
With my manager, she had a baby and we were both pumping and she put hers in the refrigerator and I looked at hers, I was like, "What?" And her milk looked like vitamin D, whole milk, and mine looked
Mm,
like skim next to hers. And she saw me
mhm.
looking at her, she said, Gretchen, don't be trying to take my milk." Like I was like, "Nobody would want your milk, like, what are you talking about?" Like, I would that's so why would I even want that? But I totally did.
Yeah,
Oh.
right. That was my dear friend Gretchen from episode 11. So go back and listen to her full story of breastfeeding her three children. She gives lots of honest truths and drops some serious wisdom in that episode. But many of us have been there, either in person, seeing the milk of a coworker, or seeing the pictures in Facebook groups of other people's pumped milk and think, whoa, my milk does not look like that. So let's talk a little bit about human milk composition. And right now, I am talking about mature milk, not colostrum. Human milk provides about 50% of your baby's energy needs. And so, of course, if you've ever heard that statistic, you might be worried. Um, if you're seeing just a thin layer of fat when you pump your milk, that your baby isn't getting enough, especially if you have a baby who seems constantly hungry or is crying a lot. Oh, maybe my milk isn't good enough for my baby. The average fat content of human milk is about 4%. So, another word for fat in human milk, if you're doing some reading and research, is lipids. So, those are not exactly the same thing, but when you look at breast milk research, lipids and fats typically are used interchangeably. So, lipids are the second greatest constituent in human milk, solid constituent. So, number one is lactose or sugar. Number two are lipids. Number three are HMOs or human milk oligosaccharides. So the lipids in human milk are the most highly variable macronutrient. And the variability comes in different ways. So the fat in the milk is variable from the start of a feed to the end of a feed. It's variable according to the time of the day that the feeding occurs. It's variable from one side of the body to the other side of the body. It's also highly variable from one person to another person. So, just like we heard in that clip from Gretchen, she and her manager were very close. They saw each other very frequently, and she could see that her manager's milk was often much fattier than her milk. Um, and that was just a personal difference. The initial milk of a feed is often referred to as the foremilk. The end milk of a feed is often referred to as the hind milk. So, usually, the hind milk contains more fat than the foremilk. I've talked about this in a previous episode when I discussed oversupply. This is because fat is insoluble in water, and there's a lot of water in breast milk. And so the fat separates. That's why you see in your bottles of pump milk that the fat will come to the top and the rest of the milk will be at the bottom. And so that happens in your milk ducts as well. The fat likes to stick to the milk ducts. And so often that fat does not get pulled out until the end of the feed. And so that is why the fore milk often has more of that high lactose milk, high sugar milk, and the hind milk has more of that high lipase milk or high fat milk. However, the following statement is always true. The fat content of human milk is directly related to the relative fullness or emptiness of the breast. So, milk in a fuller breast equals lower fat milk. Milk in an almost empty breast, breasts are never fully empty, but milk in an almost empty breast equals higher fat milk. So, you know that towards the end of a feed, your baby is getting higher fat milk. That might also be why, if you pump and you're not really able to pull as much milk out with your pump, either because the suction levels aren't great, or because hormonally you don't respond as well to your pump, or because you don't use hands on pumping methods, or because you don't have the best pump for your body, or because you aren't sized properly, you might see lower fat milk when you pump. But if you pump and also feed your baby directly at the body, your baby is probably getting higher fat milk than when you pump. So that's one way to ease your worries. One other interesting fact is that lipids increase significantly in the second year of life. So lactation professionals talk about how the milk composition changes for the needs of the baby. And so this is one of those things that changes. The energy needs grow in a growing baby. And in the second year of life, the lipid composition increases significantly. So anyone who's ever pumped in a second year of life might see that their lipid composition increases. So, one of the ways, so if you're looking for tips to increase your fat when you pump, or the fat that is coming to your baby, one thing you might do is a little milkshake. And what I mean by this is you might break up the fat globules that get stuck to the milk ducts by shaking your breasts before a feed or before a pump, or by doing hands on massaging during a feed or during a pump. That will get those fat globules that like to get stuck to the milk ducts. It will break it up and get it to kind of flow as the milk is being released. Another tip is to feed the baby or to pump when you are less full. And you might start to see that high fat milk. And of course, there's lots of things that go into this. So I have an episode about increasing milk supply while pumping. So if you never really feel empty while pumping, then you might check that out, because it might be that your phalanges aren't sized properly. And if you are somebody who has oversupply, I have a full episode on that as well, because if you're never really feeling like your breast's ever empty, then your baby's probably getting a lot of high lactose milk. And they're probably not getting to that fatty milk, and there are things you can do to mitigate that as well. But my best tip, really, is to just not worry about the fat content of your milk unless you're seeing signs of oversupply in your baby. And then you can mitigate for that oversupply, because you can trust that the milk your body is creating is the best for your baby. That's all you need to know about fat in milk. If you are interested in learning more about human milk composition, about the composition of colostrum, about protein in milk, about various minerals in milk, come join my community on Facebook. It's called the Milk Making Minutes Community Group. We explore systemic barriers that make breastfeeding difficult there. Anyone can post in that group, but you can come and post and you can let me know that you would like to know more about the composition of human milk, and I can do another quick hit episode. I'll see you there.